Rock 102, Springfield's Classic Rock. It's 8:14 in the Cars on Rock 102.
So earlier this week, it was announced that Chicopee Mayor John View was going to reappoint former and retired police officer Mike Wilk back onto the department as a special officer, meaning he would be entitled to do details and details only. He would not be doing patrolling. He would not be doing public information. He wouldn't be doing any of that. He was forced out of the job, basically, because of a social media faux pas, and not everybody is happy about him coming back in any capacity.
And that would include Chicopee School Committee member James Tanhauser Jr., and he's on the phones right now. Good morning, Jim. How are you?
Good morning. How you guys doing today? Thanks for having me on.
All right, no problem. Give us the biggest reason why you're upset about the idea of Mike Wilk coming back just to do details.
Because that would be tolerating racism at that point. The mayor himself last year said racism has no place in the city and forced Mike Wilk to retire. 1 year later, the mayor's bringing him back. That seems like you're going back on your word, especially when you're saying racism has no place in the city. And I just can't find anything right or good about that at all.
Well, do you believe that when somebody makes a comment on social media that they then become labeled as a particular individual based on that comment, and that comment makes that person a racist for good forever?
If he made one post, sure, it could have been described as a mistake, but he has had a long history of these questionable / racist posts dating back to as early as 2012, I believe, maybe even earlier. So, this has been something that's going on for a long time. It wasn't, a slip of the keyboard, and he's even had a chance to admit that, and he hasn't done that. If anything, he said what he wrote is very clear, so we have to judge it based on that.
You're certainly not alone in being critical of this decision by the mayor of Chicopee, but the police department, not just in Chicopee but other places too, is facing staffing shortages that are pretty pretty cumbersome for the department to handle. I can understand to a degree why you would want to bring people back. But are you more concerned about the fact that there are these shortages, or is it just about the individual?
Oh, of course, the shortages are concerning. However, I don't see that as anything to do with bringing back Mike Wilk. We could have a shortage of nurses and doctors in the country, but we're not going to go to our prison system or anything like that and bring people out of there just because we need them. There's qualified people out there. There's programs where we can increase participation. Those are the routes I want to take, not bringing back people who have alienated large portions of our community.
You don't think if during COVID, if he were still alive, we wouldn't have brought Dr. Jack Kevorkian back and given him his medical license again?
Who knows? Maybe our mayor would have, but not me.
Yeah. So back in January, you came under fire for a social media post that you put online that said that rioters who stormed the U.S. Capitol should be put in the ground. You were apparently reminded of that recently, and then your response to the reminder was that your comment should not be equated to Wilkes because the rioters' actions were a crime against the federal government.
Right.
You're kind of parsing words here, Jim.
So I'll start off by just explaining I wake up that morning, when the Capitol protest or attack was it was a protest to start. It turned into an attack very quickly. And there was a Facebook post by a friend of mine that was completely going against these, attackers, which I call them domestic terrorists, in my opinion, attacking a Capitol building like that. And he was very critical of it, so I posted that comment in response. It wasn't on my own post. I didn't go out of my way to post it. However, I find out, 20, 30 minutes later that all over the Chicopee forums it was posted, and it was posted by one individual, and that person was Mike Wilk. Not a single other person cared about that comment prior.
Okay.
He brings this out.
It's not really so much about who cares about it or who repeats it or who likes it. It's the fact that you wrote it.
Right. And I'm not denying it. I just think it's a very important distinction to make. Where Mike Wilk's comment, I might have been the 20th or 30th person to respond about those comments. Mike Wilk was the first and might have been the only prevailing voice in it. I'm not saying, that my language in that post wasn't aggressive. I've used aggressive language in the past, but it's the point of the situation. There's a huge difference between the two situations, and to equate the two is simply, in my opinion, Mike trying to, grasp at straws and bring me down to his level.
You know, you sound like a young man, so I'm imagining that it probably hasn't been a long time since you've heard one of your parents say, if Billy Jim jumped off the bridge, would that mean you'd have to jump off it too?
Oh, my parents, my dad says stuff like that all the time.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure he's listening right now, so I'll say hi to both my parents.
Well,
right
what
now.
you're referring to as aggressive writing on your part is actually probably looked at by others as violent. You're suggesting people should be put in the ground. You're suggesting that rioters should be killed and then buried.
I'm suggesting that domestic terrorists be stopped before our democracy potentially gets defeated or overtaken, because when that comment was made, it was not sure what was going on. The riot line was broken. Officers were attacked. We have William Evans, right from our area, as a matter of fact, was killed by a driver. And when that driver got out of the car with a knife, he was shot and killed by Capitol Police. And in my opinion, that's right. That's rightfully so.
You know, I think, and again, this is Chicopee School Committee member Jim Tanhauser Jr. on the phone. To me, the concerning thing for not just for Chicopee, but any city that's facing this, because certainly there are police departments all across the country that have been accused of an institutional racist point of view. When you consider the opinion of many people across this country that policing is inherently racist, and then you have a situation where a public information officer, or any officer really, goes ahead and makes comments that could be seen as racist, I can see why people like the Talbot Swans of the world come out and say, this is a bad decision. This almost is like condoning his actions. And I can understand that from that perspective, and I can understand your argument from that perspective. But the city is obviously seeing something very different, and very clearly, you can say, well, is the city willing to overlook the kind of public relations issue that this causes? I mean, have you talked to anybody in City Hall specifically that can give you a reasonable explanation as to why you bring a guy like Michael Wilk back?
Unless those comments you heard by Mayor View were reasonable to you, no, I haven't. I haven't heard any good reason why bringing him back. It seems like the people who are in support of bringing him back, such as our mayor, such as our police chief, are individuals who aren't really engaged on social media. They aren't active to the pulse of these people who speak on social media. If you go on there, you are seeing plenty of Chicopee residents, prominent ones at that, saying that this is absolutely ridiculous, and to have someone in this position with a badge on them and while they're alienating a whole portion of our community, whether it be African American, Hispanic, however, whatever social media post of his you want to reference, it's just really important that our students and teachers, and that's my concern as a school committee member, that they feel represented and protected by their representatives at all times.
If I could go back to your last lame attempt to try to excuse yourself, you said something to the effect of that the rioter who got in his car and attempted to drive at the officer and hit him and then came out of his car with a knife should have been taken down by the police. You're right. That's absolutely true. But that's not what your comment said online. You said rioters who stormed the Capitol should be put in the ground. You didn't specify criminals. You didn't specify felons. You didn't specify anyone who took the life of someone else. You simply suggested that rioters should be killed.
I did say imminent threat, did I not?
Well, in the part that Mass Live repeated, no, it is not included in there.
Yeah, it was definitely an imminent threat to be put into the ground was the comment I made. And it would be on Facebook still, because I did not delete that comment. The friend who made the original post deleted the post. So unfortunately, fortunately, it's not there anymore, according to you. But for me,
all I'm saying is it's not on the Mass Live repeat of the quote. I don't know whether it's on Facebook or not.
Fair enough. And like you say, maybe for the better, it's not up there anymore. If I apologize for anything, it's the language I used, the point I made. I can't really back off that point. I just cannot sympathize with domestic terrorists in any way.
And you believe that Mike Wilk is a domestic terrorist, or you believe he's a racist?
I believe he's definitely a racist. But in terms of the domestic terrorism at the Capitol building, at the very least, I feel like he sympathizes with them.
What is it exactly that you, again, whether or not an individual makes a racist comment, I'm not sure I agree with the label of them then being a racist. Oftentimes people say the wrong thing. It doesn't necessarily label them as a particular group or a member of a group. So, but
You're right, John. That and if he made one comment, that's one thing. He has had almost a decade-long history of these comments, not only at African Americans, but then you go back to the one where he's saying illegal immigrants put their head on a spike that will deter illegal immigration. You know, I'm paraphrasing, of course, but putting a head on a spike, like that's the language we want from our local police. No, I can't get behind that.
I think the issue is, and we know Mike Wilk a little bit. I think the part of the issue is that even if you believe he is racist, the issue is that he wrote things that were insensitive, and the public information officer using social media to project certain opinions needs more sensitivity than just blurt out stuff that could be misconstrued or misinterpreted as something that it may not have been intended to be. And that's the biggest problem with social media is that, you know, we throw out our opinions without any real thought about the ramifications or consequences of those statements. I'm sure Mike Wilk didn't go, you know, online with the idea of saying, well, I'm going to be a racist today on social media. But the fact that it remains, what he said was seen as very insensitive to a lot of people who he's been hired to protect within his own city. I think that's a fair statement.
Absolutely. I think you put it very well.
All right.
Are you considering the possibility of running for higher office at some point in the city of Springfield, Chicopee?
City of Chicopee. Not right now. I'm planning to stay with the school committee. You know, I do have a lot of work to still do here. I think there's a lot of potential for growth in our schools. For the future, you know, it depends how the campaign funds look, right? Because higher office is very expensive. It takes to have a good voting base. I think we have that now, but in the future, we'll have to reevaluate that.
All right. Well, it did sound like a misspeak, but no, I really did mean, why don't you run in Springfield instead? Jim
Tanhauser from the Chicopee School Committee. We appreciate the time, Jim. Thanks for coming on today.
Of course. Have a good one, guys.
All right, you too. It's 8:26 on Rock 102.